Okay, hello, warriors. Welcome back. Welcome to Warriors of Light Show, Transmission Thursdays. We are back here again to just share all things transmissions. And today's transmission is kind of like a mini series because the last week. Oh, sorry. And today's transmission is kind of like a mini. Okay. Okay, so yes, so today's transmission is like a mini series. Last week we were doing the ancestral money trauma healing, and you guys really loved that one. So I'm back again to talk all things relationships, ancestral relationship trauma healing. So let's share this and then we'll begin. Say hello once you have joined in. Let me know that you are here. Okay, so how are you feeling? This past Tuesday, we had the Jupiter in conjunction to Neptune. This was a big deal. It's a big deal. This conjunction has not happened in 165 years. So when big solar bodies, when they meet together, the impact of that meeting trickles down here on Earth, and it affects us energetically, as well as in terms of the events that starts to unfold. Right? So this one was really big because it was, it's still ongoing, really, the impact of it. It's a conjunction that's really going to be shifting the cultural landscape of humanity. And so we may start to see some chaos coming through. And I think already there's been chaos in South Africa with the floods, right? I'm not sure if it was a flood, but yes, water streaming through and really affecting people's homes. And this often happens with the conjunction. Like there will be these big chaotic events happening all around. These are cleansings. These are also part of our evolution, our evolutionary path as Earth, as the spirit of Nala. So we can definitely expect things to be a little intense in the next coming days. But really, the more we attune ourselves to these energies and we stop fighting them, the more we have opportunities to see changes and shifts, right? So this is part of the divine plan to cleanse and allow us to step into a higher timeline and a higher purpose, right? So I don't know how your dreams have been since Tuesdays, but there is definitely something in the dream landscape as well, if you've been paying attention around this energy of Neptune. So it's pretty good. For me, I started cleansing. I'm doing a green juice cleanse since that day, Tuesday. And so I'm on day 2. Is it 2, 3, 2? Yes. And my energy is a little weak, but I wanted to show up here and share with you guys. Yeah, so let me know that you're here. As we will be jumping in to the ancestral relationship trauma healing. This is kind of like a continuation but like from a different perspective, right? And this continuation, the part of it that we're continuing is working with Richard Rood's gene keys, that system that is so dear to me, that is so lovely to me. If you do genetic alchemy or ancestral healing, it will change your life to study your gene keys, to study the gene keys really all together, right? So when we are speaking relationships, and relationships have been so big for us as a collective this year, you know, this month, every other day, really. So even in my sessions, I've just been seeing a lot of the work that I'm doing, particularly with the women, to be around relationships. So this will be a deeper way for us to contemplate on this and like just get ideas of how do we navigate these changes in our everyday relationships. Okay, so according to Richard Rood, when we talk about relationships, we look at what he calls the Venus sequence. Last week, we were talking about the Pearl sequence. This week, we're talking about the Venus sequence, right? And this is interesting. The Venus sequence is obviously connected to the planet Venus. And if you may know, just from teachings around, Venus is connected to, it's the planet of love, right? But I wanted to bring a different perspective in terms of Venus and spiritual initiation, right? In terms of the way in which Earth is being initiated right now, there are particular planets that are influential to our evolution specifically, right? And one of those planets is Venus. And Venus is really we can think of it as the big sister of Earth, or we could also think of it as the higher self of Earth, because Venus is currently initiating Earth and initiating humans into higher consciousness, right? When we are talking about 5D ascension, 5D, the fifth dimension, Venus is, when we look at it from our solar system, is in the fifth dimension, right? Which is essentially where the new Earth is going to be. So already we get that Venus is important to our evolution, to our ascension. And if Venus, we take the Richard Rood's teachings, if Venus is connected to relationships, then this really tells us that our relationships are the pathway to our ascension. They are the ways in which we have the greatest opportunity to ascend, to evolve, to grow, to develop, right? Which is what makes learning your Venus sequence a very revolutionary thing that you could ever do for yourself in terms of your healing and your ascension. Understanding the patterns of your relationships, which is essentially what we call the Venus sequence. Understanding your Venus sequence will allow you to bring greater healing, right, into your life. So this is what we are going to be contemplating on the Venus sequence and Venus stream as well. So the thing about the Venus planet is that it's a feminine planet, right? And so as a feminine planet, this means that the energy that is being initiated by Venus back to Earth, it's a feminine frequency. Right? And this feminine frequency is awakening us. Right? This feminine frequency is what we call also the feminine Christ, the Holy Spirit, right? And this is what we'll be diving deep into in Healing with Divine Grandmothers. We are going to be awakening and cultivating this frequency of the feminine that is currently right now returning through the golden age, awakening the mass, helping us step into the new higher timelines of what is possible for us as a human species, right? So that's the thing about Venus. So because of that, you would find that it is often the women right now who are engaging in multitude in spiritual initiations, right? So it's the women who are often hosting the feminine, who are also able to hear and receive the Venus stream, the Venus initiation, because it's the same kind of frequency, right? So that's why there's always a lot of women. I mean, in this community, there are more women than men. I've worked with more women than men, and it's really because of that. And it's also because of that, that women are particularly attuned to the Venus sequence in our intimate relationships. And so in another way, it's the reason why women care so much about relationships is that we kind of get it, that it's through relationships that we will ascend and grow and evolve as a planet, right? So us being crazy about relationship is actually part of this quantum mechanics of our current evolution, right? Because we can feel the stream, we understand the relationships, we understand why we have to work so hard to have the relationships that are nurturing for us, that are deeply nourishing to us as well, right? Are you with me? Hello, hello. So yeah, so this is just the foundation of the Venus sequence. I want to read this before we jump in. Right, so this is from Richard Rood. He's saying, it's just kind of like a little bit of an expansion on what I was saying. He's saying, in today's modern world, the most powerful way of releasing one's higher attributes is not so much through sustained periods of meditation, but through deep acceptance of our everyday relationship dynamics. Most of us simply do not realize that right here in our everyday lives, and particularly in the energetic exchanges between men and women, is a vast secret waiting to be decoded. True Tantra is the transforming of a negative genetic pattern between any two people into pure acceptance. This acceptance presupposes understanding must take place first, and this is what the Venus sequence brings. The understanding that all relationship dynamics are ruled by specific shadow patterns inherited through our DNA. And this is how ancestry comes through. The understanding born of this is so powerful that it shatters this whole game of the battle of the sexes and leads to an entirely new way of relating, right? So let's talk a little bit about how relationship dynamics, the dynamics patterns you keep experiencing, are actually ruled or influenced by what you inherited in your DNA, right? So we have come to understand, if you've been following me, that a lot of our experiences are connected to DNA, to genetics, right? And so the same is true also for relationships. And the reason why that's the case is a part of having the human experience and the human relationship has a lot to do with transmuting shadows, right? Darkness. And so because of that, just by being human, there is an aspect of you that is choosing to come here on earth, to come and relate and experience difficulties, challenges in your relationships. And there are particular specific shadows that you specifically have chosen to work with, right? And these shadows, you'd often find that they are often available to be perceived in your bloodline. So what this means is if you find yourself constantly experiencing rejection in your relationship dynamic, that frequency of rejection, which is a shadow, which is a darkness, because it is not organically of God, it is not how God would want you to experience yourself, it is not the true logo of creation, it is an inversion, it's an opposite of acceptance. You know, to reject is to not accept. So when we experience that rejection, it's important to expand our awareness that sometimes if it keeps coming up, this is a pattern you see. This is mostly because, not mostly, probably because there is a shadow of rejection that you particularly chose to inherit from your mother, from your father's lineage, and that you are here to come and transmute it. And so when you experience these patterns of rejection, these are actually opportunities. These are initiations for you to witness and notice this shadow pattern and to transmute it, not only for yourself, but for the future generation, right? We are all tasked here with cleaning up our DNA so that the future generation does not experience relationships the way that we experience relationships. And right now with the golden ages, we're moving through the Kali Yuga, this dark time. We are actually doing a lot of cleaning. And we can see how the planetary bodies, the solar bodies are supporting us. The Mercury conjuncting Neptune is an example of that. All these energies, all these updates that we keep receiving all the time. Like, it may feel like we're doing updates all the time, but it's also mostly because of the time we're in, which is a time of great transformation, great transition. And we're transitioning from one way of relating to another way of relating, right? And that new way of relating is greatly influenced by the feminine, right? So the thing about the feminine is that she is a creator. The great mother is a creator. She is an embodiment and the divine logo, the divine architecture of love, while the divine masculine is the expression of wisdom, right? So the experience of love itself, right? And the experience of how the feminine creates the experience of love is that it's also sometimes mirrored back by not love, not experiencing love, right? And how many of us can say that they've experienced that? How many of us believe that they may not be so lovely or lovable, or they've not experienced true love in their lives? Right? That's also just another, it may be an inversion, but another face of the great feminine, right? When we are feeling all those emotions of rejections and. So feelings is a big part of the Venus sequence. Emotions is a big part of the Venus sequence. And this connects us to what the waters, right? Emotions are our waters, and the element of water is the great feminine as well, because it's here to come and cleanse us, okay? Does this make sense? Let me know. Who, as you guys know, I am on water cleanse, so my energy is a little weak today. Well, I'm not on a water cleanse, I'm on a green juice cleanse. Yes, okay. Okay, so let's actually jump into the Venus sequence. So every single one of us, if you are yet to know the gene keys, every single one of us, when we incarnate, there are specific keys, genetic, ancestral energies that you choose to come here and transmute and heal. But we do it in honor of our ancestors. We do it in honor of the incoming future generation, right? So based on this ideology, there are particular main keys that are connected to the Venus sequence, right? So I'm just going to move through them quickly because they will really help you to understand why you may be experiencing the same dynamic or particular karmic imprints and loop in your relationships. Okay, so there are different reasons for that, right? So the Venus sequence starts with what we call the attraction sphere or the attraction key. Right? The attraction key is essentially that the relationships that you will attract that will greatly create and impact and influence you often come from other timelines, and there is this karmic energy that is bringing these people to you. And so as you come together, both of you are going to play out the karma, all with the attempt to come and resolve this karma. Right? So your key here is to figure out what kind of shadows am I holding that I will call people in to come and essentially transmute that, right? So quick example with my chart, so that maybe this makes sense. So my gene key for my attraction sphere is gene key 4, right? And so this is the shadow of intolerance, the gift of understanding, and the city of forgiveness, right? So we must understand the highest level, exact level of experiencing our relationships. We must first transmute our shadows, awaken the gift within us, and then when grace comes upon us, when the Holy Spirit visits us, because we have done the work of transmuting the shadows, we are working with our gift, we will be gifted the Siddhic state, which are the highest levels of samadhi, of enlightenment, right? So this is what every soul is here to do, to step into that Christed energy, Christed beingness, right? So meaning that the city of forgiveness is not something I get to do or create. It's something I am gifted by the Holy Mother, by the great Shakti, the great feminine, right? By grace. So this is the thing about the Venus sequence. It's basically working with grace. The more you allow yourself to do the work, the more grace will visit you, right? Which really means that the more you will experience divine union, the perfect matrimony, right? Not necessarily that you are married, but where you and your beloved are experiencing the highest level of love, of devotion, of admiration, of beauty, right? Of kindness, of compassion with each other, right? So here for me, I noticed once I started to understand my gene keys that there is a shadow of intolerance. And this used to appear like this for me, where I will attract specific partners who could not really comprehend my belief systems, and sometimes moving into a frequency of not tolerating this aspect of myself, which led to either having to hide myself in that relationship, and then eventually going through a state of dissatisfaction and disappointment in that relationship, right? Even if the person was wonderful, there was levels of intolerance that they may have projected onto me. And equally, there were also moments where I would be intolerant to other people, my partners specifically, where they are in terms of their spiritual evolution and how they perceive reality. And this kept happening. And it will create just this, obviously, lack of balance in the relationships, and they never worked. Eventually, they wouldn't work because of the shadow of intolerance, which either came from them or came from me. And it's so subtle, right? So in your attraction field, I mean, the simple thing is to just go get your gene key chart. It's free online. But yeah, otherwise, if you want to understand it, because it's crazy, I also do gene key readings for people. I just usually do them for my private clients. So the gene key of intolerance, once I started to work realized this, and I realized that fundamentally for me, I do desire to be tolerated. Actually, the way to explain it is I greatly desire to be understood. And the reason why I greatly desire that is because I myself had a gift. I have a gift of understanding, an ability to understand different perspectives, right? And so in my union, that has to be also a foundation. We have to understand each other, right? And once I started to work on transmuting intolerance, where I'm not tolerating other people's belief systems and where they're at, I came into a greater acceptance. And also I started to realize a shift in the people who will come through, who I will magnetize. The more I healed, the more those who are likely to understand me started to appear in my reality. While before I didn't even believe I could find Black men who could understand my belief system and my path as an oracle. I've been greatly surprised, right? So your attraction field is, what is the karma that you're here to come and heal? The people you are in relationship with, most of us, before we do healing, it's often our karmic partners, not necessarily the divine union, because the divine union is based on when you have transcended the shadow, right? That divine union will come through once you have stepped into this, the gift and the city, right? And it's important for us to know that working on our attraction field is probably one of the most important things you can work on, because the template of ascension, is these divine unions, right? So many, especially those who are spiritually gifted, we actually have missions with our beloveds that we are here to come and do and anchor, right? And so because of that, we have to do the work of healing so that we can step into divine unionships that will allow us to step into our higher missions and purpose as a couple, right? So we have to work on that attraction field. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. And then we have, I had mentioned a little bit of this, but I want to just go through from a perspective of relationship. Once we start realizing that most of the relationships that we've been in are karmic, as in we have trauma with those souls, previous trauma, right? And that previous trauma is going to play out in our relationships, whether we are aware of it or not, and that we must decode what the trauma is between us and these souls, then we can begin to transmute it, right? Of course, the thing about the beauty of the architecture of reality is that, you see, the family you incarnate with often will be holding the same traumas that your soul has experienced before. So for example, you would experience an emotionally unavailable father because in the past, the masculine has been emotionally unavailable to you. And so as a feminine, as a soul feminine, you are here to transmute that form of rejection and abandonment, right? And that's your mission, but it's also your karma. And so because of that abandonment and rejection, the man you will later attract will also do the same rejection and abandonment, which is why the father wound healing is so fundamental, as well as the mother wound, of course, in our relationship healing, right? So we don't need to always do past life regressions to find out what were the events that happened there, because we can get so stuck in the stories. What matters is, what is the energy I picked and came with from those lifetimes? And how are these energies right now replaying on a karmic loop as a pattern, right? Often those energies will just easily merge with your ancestral lineage, and they get amplified by the ancestral lineage as well, right? So if you heal your ancestral patterns, the ones you can see that people here are going through this, you are actually also still healing your soul. This is also what we mean when we say we are our ancestors. Like when you understand what DNA is, it's so much bigger than just the individual ancestors you have. It's about memory. What is the memory I am carrying from the past? This is my memory and the memories of those who came before me that is influencing me, right? So that is the attraction field. Moving on to the IQ, right? So the IQ as a key, which is about your mental development. It's a reflection of the ages between 14 to 21. And it's about the mental defense mechanism that you created to essentially close your heart, to not get heartbroken. And we do that based on the experiences we had in those ages, 14 to 21, which are mostly influenced by our experiences with our primary caregivers, but whoever those primary caregivers are, whether that's our biological parents, mother, father, or not, right? And so in that time, we are growing mentally and we start to realize certain things are painful for us, right? So maybe at that moment when you experience abandonment, instead of really processing that, you in the mind, you will either say, you know what, I don't care anyway. I wasn't expecting him to come. Talking about dad who was supposed to come and pick you up, but he didn't come, right? So at 14 to 21, we do a lot of that mental defense mechanism. But the more we do them, the more they have the ability to actually close our heart and close how we relate with other people, right? And sometimes they pull us into a victim consciousness because a lot of our struggle as humanity within our relationship is transcending the idea of the victim, right? How many of us can easily move through a moment with a partner without feeling like they did us wrong? You did us wrong. You came late, so you did me wrong. And it's like this big entire story that you hold on to. And that's victim consciousness instead of really looking at this from a more broader and higher perspective. We struggle to do that, right? So your IQ key is there to help you understand how you mentally, the shadows of your mind, what is the default of how you defend yourself mentally when something is happening, right? So this will look like, for me, my defense is dislocation, which makes the shadow of dislocation, which makes so much sense because when I was 14 to 21, I definitely, when I was going through difficult experiences, will literally just daydream. I will read books, I will watch movies, dislocate, not be in the moment, not be at the present location, right? And so in my relationships, I would see patterns like that as well, where I dislocate when there is a difficulty in that relationship, a problem, a challenge we're going through. I will just shift, I will dislocate, I will go watch my movie, not process what's happening, right? So the mental defense mechanisms are tricky because they will make you feel that you are on the right, you know, and convince you that it's the man or the woman who did you wrong, right? So here we have to look at what happens in our mind when we are in discomfort, when we are having a challenge in our relationship. How do I process that, right? What is my default, right? So these are the 6 patterns that we often take when we're in victim consciousness, right? We hide, which is what I did for me, dislocation. I would just hide from the problem by watching movies, right? We deny, it's not happening. I don't know what this person is talking about. I'm not gonna entertain this. Or we escape, you know, which is both a mental and a physical escape, right? Escape is probably where the culture of ghosting comes from, which is a very horrible thing to do to someone, you know. But it's like, instead of dealing with the situation, you just kind of like escape and you don't deal with it, you know. And rejecting what's happening, or rejecting the other person, and so forth, right? Delude, which is essentially lying to yourself. You know, you can see all the red flags, but you're like, no, but this is not what is really going on, right? Women, you know, we do that deluding, you know, and disconnect as well, right? So you can just see ultimately around the IQ is just basically the refusal to be present. And that happens when you close your heart, which means that the Holy Spirit can move through you. Grace cannot work with you with your heart open, right? The heart center is the pathway to the mother, to the Holy Mother. So that's not going to happen when we have closed and we're like in our mental defense mechanism. So this is one of the keys we need to work on if we want to transmute our relationships, right? Okay. Is this making sense? Are you with me? Who? Let me know if you are following. And then we have the EQ, right? The EQ is our emotional development cycle, right? And this is connected to age 7 to 14. Right. Yeah, thank you, Claire. So the EQ is connected to age 7 to 14, right? And this is actually the most important part of your Venus sequence, because this is essentially how we experience love will be greatly influenced by our emotional development. A lot of relationships, why we get stuck in karmic loops, are often because of not being developed emotionally, right? Not knowing how to manage our emotions, not understanding like the difference between a trigger happening internally and your partner, and constantly projecting your emotional discomfort that are happening not necessarily because of your partner, but because, yes, your partner is playing a role, but because of other deeper emotions you have not yet processed. So the EQ is your emotional defense mechanism. When there is an emotional event happening in your relationship, this is the shadow you would jump into, you will use, will be how you defend yourself from feeling, from being present with feeling. One of the reasons why in ascension, it's so painful, right? For most people, it's even when we talk about like initiation, spiritual initiations are painful, whether that's an auricular initiation or a shamanic one. It's mostly actually connected to the EQ key. It's because most of us have not been living our whole lives in our body, right? We've just been in the mind. We've been functioning from the 14-year-old, 21-year-old self, right? And we have suppressed the 7-year-old to the 14-year-old. A lot of the time we do a lot of retrieval of the inner child in the caves of the inner children, the lost children, because we completely shut down and disconnected from our emotional self and emotional bodies, right? So the reason why it's painful to go through that process, to breathe, do breath work, or to just be in meditation and witness your ancestors' pain and your own pain, it's because the emotional body has not been alive. We shut it down. So when we go back to feel, it's like shocking to the nervous system. So it takes a bit of time, right? So even in all the ancient temple cultures you could ever imagine, the cultivation of the emotional body is one of the most important. It's also the key to discernment, to how you know what is true and what is not true. And this is why sometimes we're like shocked when certain events happen in relationships and we're like, I wasn't expecting it. This is because we were not in the body. As the feminine, your intuition would have already long told you, right? It's either you were rejecting the intuition, which is often connected to the emotional body as well, right? So you have to really work so deeply at this cycle, at this key, the EQ. The EQ is essentially your inner child work. Figuring out what that your main shadow is with the gene key will really help you to know how to best heal yourself. And it's so interesting how these patterns are like connected, y'all, right? They are so connected with each other. So yeah, so that's it with the EQ. The more you release your emotional bodies, the more you open a greater space for deep connection with your beloved. Right? So the good news, because I know a lot of women, we are probably doing this work and our partners are not, is the more you work at your emotional body, just by being in that union, you will unlock and activate your partner, and they will also start to come and do the work, right? And this is why sometimes it's like the feminine has to lead the spiritual journey and path, because the partner can, when you shift your emotional body, that emotional body has to shift, because what was locking both of you in karmic, repetitive, painful patterns was this emotional body that was not healthy, that was not processed, right? Yes. Okay. So the next one is the SQ, right? So the SQ is between 0 and 7, also super important because this is during our physical development, right? But what's interesting about this is this age, this period from 0 to 7, we are getting to know the new world, the physical world. And so we are growing and getting to understand ourselves as physical beings. But at the same time, we are more connected to the spirit realm than any other cycle. And so here, this is where we usually experience our first traumas. The first time you were rejected, the first time you were abandoned by mom or dad, often happens during this time. This is when you will learn what it feels like to be heartbroken, right? This is where we may also close our heart, but the closing of the heart tends to really fully ground by the 14 to 21. But at this age, this is where there's so much happening to you on a subtle level. You are learning so much, and you are also creating the patterns and the imprints that you will go through in this lifetime. This is where you are learning about relationshiping through observing your parents, right? Through observing the masculine and the feminine and how they relate, whether that's like your biological parents or not. Right? This is when these templates are created. Your belief systems are cemented here. And this is interesting because people would think that, oh, at 0 to 7, kids don't know anything. But this is the time where that the most intuitive and most attuned to the world and what's happening to them. So they can pick on this information from an osmosis perspective, a subtle perspective. So it's not so much that you are telling them, it's more of what they are experiencing and what they're observing that will stay with them, and that will influence the type of partners they will experience. And so this part is also really important because it is what we call the love point. You will create your patterning of love here, the first point here, right? So this is a very important point which you really need to understand. Of course, during this time, it's also when you are picking up and receiving the codes, your ancestral gifts and the ancestral shadows that you're here to heal as well, right? So it's a very vast and like active time for your Venus sequence, okay? Yes, and then a little bit about the next sequence, which is the core or the vocation. We spoke about vocation last week because our vocation is definitely connected to our purpose on earth and also the relationship. You would later come to realize that, those are two of the main themes that we're here to master: relationships and our purpose, right? Our vocation. So the vocation is the 9 months you're in your mother's womb. During this time, you are inheriting the emotional, subtle, mental, spiritual energies of the human race, right? And so you are picking the energy that you will work on in this lifetime. So this is essentially you're picking on the genetic miasma, the ancestral trauma you will heal through your own life. So if we understand that every part of our life, it's part of a great design for the collective healing of humanity, that yes, some of our pain, they are partly connected to the transformation and transmutation of our genetics, and that we are here on a path of mastery to master our shadows, to activate the gift, to step into the CDs. Then we can shift and move away from victim consciousness, from thinking, oh, me, I'm not blessed with relationships, or this is what always happens to me. While that may be your experience and has been your experience, which is a valid experience, what if you looked at it as all along I was being initiated to the great vocation of my life, right? What I am here to come and experience and bring and master, right? And return back to the earth, return and create for the future generation, right? So all these challenges, they have the impulse of awakening you so that you can step into your higher self, right? So even the traumas you inherited for the collective. So the other way to think of it is like, there is only so few pain that we can talk about as a human race, right? Which is in the gene keys, there's only 64 shadows that exist, the miasmas that exist. So if we really truly want to change the world, we have to work on these shadows, but we can do the projected thing of thinking it's about fixing the external. And while there is a truth to that, we do need to change certain ways that we do things. A lot of the changes when it comes to relationship trauma healing, it's around you really understanding your role in the entire arena of relationshiping, and understanding for those of you who are called into divine unions, because being called into divine union is not necessarily for everyone in every lifetime, right? There are those who may be focusing on something different, but there are those who are called into relationships, those who we may call the starseed or the angelic or the genetic path card community, often because we are on a life of a purpose, a purposeful life. You'd find that divine union is also part of your mission to master your relationship, to experience and create a new template, a blueprint of relationshiping, right? It's part of that. I don't know how many of you have always just felt like I'm supposed to experience a great love. Like, I just know it. I hear everyone telling me about all these experiences they've had, but in my being, right, I know that I am here for something different, right? Let me know in the chat if that's you, because that is important. It's a reflection of partly your mission. If you feel the impulse that you are meant to experience relationships in a different way, that means this is part of your initiation, right? So recently in my morphogenetic field work, I've been encountering women who have the divine union template. And when you have that divine union template, you have to know you're going to have to do things differently, right? You cannot follow the rules of connection and relationships that we have seen on TV. This is not even about the love light. The actual divine union template is a template that invokes and asks of you to do deeper healing, right? To not leave any stone unturned, but particularly those 3 cycles of development, that we spoke about from 9 months, time in your mother's womb to 21, you have to do those works. So you'd find that if there are challenges that you are having in your relationships, there is a way in which you could step into mastery by perceiving these relationships as opportunity to ascend, to move through your pain with a partner, because there is no greater way of healing than actually seeing yourself in pain and literally not struggling to move through that. But it's easy to be in meditation and move and heal and cry and then feel better. In a relationship, it's in the moment. You have to deal with it as you are in that moment. So it's because of that relationships are the true pathway to ascension, right? Relationships, obviously the inner Christ and the inner kingdom it's that as well. But the way we build heaven on earth, that is through our relationships, right? So that is the Venus sequence. It is a great story that tells you how can you open more of your heart? How can you receive the essence of grace, so that it may literally open you up to call in a different form of relationship that you can step in and create as a new template of love and relationship for your bloodline, so that the children who will come through you, through your union, will experience that for themselves. They will continue that. That's how we change the world. The world will not be changed through just actions we take. It will be changed by the shifting of consciousness, right? Yes. Okay, I am done for today. I hope this spoke to you today. Let me know. Thank you all for joining. Yay. So you're saying, I think this might be me. My husband helped me to wake up, open me up, and I think I'm able to reconnect with divine masculinity. Yes, definitely. I do find that when you are on the path of ascension, which if you're in this community, you are, then you are definitely doing this divine union work, and with your partner as well, right? And it's important to, like, it's crazy to tell women of earth to open their heart more and more when it feels like we've been so heartbroken in this world. And I can get that. And mostly that's because we've not been, the masculine has not been experiencing that divinity, that divine masculine, particularly because honestly, the negative polarity and negative forces pulled our men so far away from the exalted consciousness. And this is how we've seen the breakdown of the family. But I believe like the greatest legacy we can really leave as a people is the legacy of love. I particularly think, just this is my preference, a Black love. This is how we're going to repair the Black community, for example. Like the more we reunite the masculine and the feminine, we return the masculine, the feminine back to the masculine. And this requires a different form of shifting. We can't bring our anger about certain events into this new way of relationshiping, right? We have to go deal with that anger of our fathers and all the betrayals we went through and the rejections and the abandonment. You have to heal them for you to begin to feel the masculine supporting you. And what's fascinating is the more the feminine heals, the masculine does just organically opens up. Yeah. So Fudeka, you're saying ascension is so shattering in relationships. I feel like giving up altogether. What if you thought the ascension is heart opening? It does open you up, which feels a lot like the heart breaking, right? But it is in preparation for the true divine union. The way to the true divine union is to clear out the karmic relationships. Right? And we do not need to go into relationships like, oh, this is a karmic one, so it doesn't matter. It's all important, right? Part of all the beloveds we've had, they are part of our team, our fractal. They're here to support us into stepping into a higher form of love. So if it feels like it's been breaking you over and over, it's because your spirit is saying you deserve to completely experience the highest form of love, right? And so we are going to move you through moving through karmic relationships with your beloveds. It doesn't make them any less of your beloveds just because you had a karmic relationship with them. But there is a divine union who is going to be able to move with you into the master state. Not everyone can move with you into the master state. Right? So there is a role. I mean, for me, I kind of have a rule. If it's not making me cry, I'm probably not ascending, right? So if my relationships are making me cry, if I'm feeling such contraction in my life around relationships, this is good, you know? Yeah. Yes. So once we recognize the shadow of betrayal, we need to heal the betrayal within ourselves. And I think it's very important because this is something I've had to do in sessions. Your betrayal with whoever your current partner is, it's not new. You have to go to the original betrayal, which is probably from your father and the masculine relationship you had, right? So you have to always go that back. Like sometimes what's holding you back in your current relationship is a past relationship you may have thought you moved through, but the thing is it created an imprint, that relationship. So you need to move through that, right? So the way to do that is through, obviously, connecting more and more with your body and inviting the Holy Spirit to show you, the mother, cosmic mother, great mother, to show you your pain, to show you how to heal that pain, to lead you to places, to teachers, to guides who can support you in that healing, right? Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Basako, and everyone who joined through Facebook. I will see you next week. Yay. Okay.